afternoon, everybody, and thank you so much indeed for this opportunity. I'm going to start my presentation this afternoon with my first two slides are a little bit heavy going, but don't worry, it's going to get a lot lighter when I plunge us all into the cleansing pool of veterinary business management a little bit later on with my evidence-based agenda. But this is something from my food supply chain systems background. This quote from Aristotle, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And one of the things that I gave a lot of thought to this presentation this afternoon, particularly because of the time the time slot that I was given, to really make a big impact. And the two ideas I had, I thought, I didn't really want to test my own sense of humour on you, so I've reverted to type and do what I do best, which is being an academic and presenting theory. So we've got our quote from Aristotle, which I'd like to present as the theory of marginal gains, as a matter of fact. The theory of marginal gains was popularised from the London Olympics when Sir David Brailsford actually looked at this theory and thought to himself, right, I can adopt this theory and to improve the performance of our cycling team, the British cycling team. And as you'll all recall, they did really, really, really well. And what they put it down to is this idea, this theory of marginal gains that was adopted by David Brailsford, whereby it's not big changes you make. You make lots of little changes. And the types of little changes that David Brailsford made were things, not only big things like fitness and conditioning, but letting his team take their own pillows to training sessions, to let them, to let them have a look at their rooms and say, yeah, well, do I like the bed here? Oh no, I'll shift it. Just giving them a little bit of time, and these little teeny tiny changes increased performance out of sight, one on top of another, and that's what I'd like to introduce you to today in terms of veterinary business management, which I think in terms of veterinary business management, I'm pushing an open door because it seems that there's so much demand for it, not only in the academic circles but in the profession as well. I particularly like this, what Trenor and Whiting call their tripartite relationship. There are so many people, and particularly my students at the Royal Veterinary College, who have gone into veterinary medicine because they like animals, they love animals, and so much of what I hear about veterinary medicine is animals, 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 animals. But I've only ever heard of one animal that's taken itself to a vet with an injury. I have never heard of an animal that's taken a debit card to a reception and said, yep, that's from my flea treatment. These decisions, all these purchases are made, and all these decisions are made by the owner from very, very, very sophisticated advice from you, but it's the owner. It's the pet owner, it's the farmer, the equestrian, it's whoever who's making these decisions. And you've also got the very important veterinary team. And in the first instance, my presentation this afternoon, I'd like to focus on the veterinary team. So here's my evidence-based agenda, which I'm going to go through step by step today. And right in the centre is this idea of sustainable veterinary business and the idea of making sure, come hell or high water, that you stay in veterinary business to do what you do best, which is care for animals. Keep being there to care for animals, and not only keep being there, but really enjoy caring for animals, and not only you, but your staff as well. So I'm going to start with team engagement, and then I'm going to go around to client relations, and I'm going to go around to improving practice turnover. So let me start with the idea of team engagement. There's an enormous business consultancy called the Gallup Group. They're an international business consultancy, and they spend a lot of their time looking at team engagement, the idea of team engagement, and to manage the enormous amount of data they have on team engagement, they break they break their data down, and they've got different groups, different clusters of the different types of engaged, unengaged, or actively disengaged employees. And these three types of employees make it easier to understand the data. So, just very quickly, let me go through these definitions. An engaged employee: those who are involved in, enthusiastic about, and committed to their work and workplace. Engaged people: is characterised as someone who just turns up for work, does their job, often with the minimum acceptable standard. You probably know people like this in your own workplace. And then there's the actively disengaged. I hope you don't know any people like this in your workplace, but I know people in my workplace who are the actively disengaged. Those who align themselves against the organisation's goals and subvert the best endeavours of their colleagues. These are really dangerous people who can, and these aren't the people who sort of steal from the organisation and drive the organisation's cars up trees and that sort of thing. They're not bad people. They're just actively disengaged from their work environment. So, some evidence from what we know about these types of people. Engaged employees generate 43% more revenue than the other two types of colleagues. Engaged employees in the UK take an average of 2.69 sick days per year, compared to the disengaged who take 6.19 sick days per year. Now, in the service industry, which I know all about because I've been working it for a long time now, when someone's off sick, particularly when you've got clients to see, it's really difficult to replace someone who just turns up sick. And so I won't say anymore. So engaged employees are 87% less likely to leave. Now, I've heard around the traps how difficult it is to get experienced vets with 5 to 10 years experience. You don't want people leaving, because when they leave, you have to get somebody new, and it's just so much downtime for you. 67% of engaged staff actually advocate their organisation, whereas only 3% of the disengaged do. So these are the people who are at the pub saying, yeah, I really love Royals vet practice. I really love working there. Gee, Nick takes such good care of the animals that come in. Whereas a disengaged person would say, oh, Liz is not a very good vet, and Liz is just, she's just in it for the money and that sort of thing. You don't want that. Word of mouth is so important. You need as many people, including your staff, advocating what you do and how good you are at it and how much you care about your profession and your job. So 9 out of 10 of key barriers to successful change are people related. And why have I got that there? I can't remember. 9 out of 10 of key barriers to successful change are people related. Oh, so basically, and don't forget, the veterinary industry in this country at the moment is experiencing an enormous amount of change with, dare I say, the C word, corporatisation, in this audience. There is an enormous amount of change, and there are an enormous amount of people having a lot of difficulty coming to terms with the change that is being experienced. And you don't want, if these people are really good employees, you don't want them to leave because they don't understand what's going on around them. And finally, 59% of engaged employees, EE, say work brings out their most creative ideas, whereas only 3% of disengaged people agree with this statement. Now, in business, we need to be creative, particularly in a highly competitive environment. We need to keep thinking of new ideas. So we're just a little bit better, and not on a clinical basis, but just a little bit better in how we're serving customers, how we're serving their pets, to make sure we're just a little bit better than the practitioner down the road. Okay, I've just got a little bit of a question for you. I'd hate you to be sleeping at this time. When organisations successfully engage their customers and their employees, they experience a what? You don't have to say it. Don't feel compelled to shout anything out. I don't even feel embarrassed. But they experience a what? Boost in performance-related business outcomes. I'll just give you a couple of seconds. Just ballpark. Are you ready? Yeah. Yeah, that's what Gallup Consulting told us back in 2013. And this is not veterinary related, this is across the board. But yeah, a 240% boost in performance-related business outcomes. So the evidence that I'm presenting to you is suggesting that it works. These are just not pie-in-the-sky type stuff. This stuff actually works. And don't panic, I'm actually going to tell you how to do it as well. So, okay. Love a pie chart. I've got 2 slides of pie charts. This is it. Now we're getting vet. This is vet stuff from 2011 from the Vet Support Business Services, and they looked at employee engagement in the veterinary industry. Now, my top chart is pretty good news. My top chart, well, their top chart, not my top chart, is asking whether. And the left-hand sort of red type charts are the practice. So maybe the practice manager, the senior partner, the owner, whereas the right-hand chart, the grey charts, are the staff who are actually working on a day-to-day basis in the veterinary practice. So to what extent do you agree that the relationship between individual team members and the veterinary team is generally good? And so we've got 79% of practice management actually agree, and 76% of staff actually agree. So we're pretty good. There's a good deal of parity there. So there's no surprises there, which I was really pleased. But if we dig a little bit deeper, the story isn't so good, I'm afraid. If we go down to my next graph, to what extent do you agree that there is a great deal of trust in the team? The management would strongly agree, 87%. Staff who are actually turning up to work on a day-to-day basis to help run this business, only 62%. So what this chart is demonstrating is that we're starting to see a gap between what management actually think is happening and what staff are actually feeling. So we don't want to get too depressed, so this is just the last one. So do you agree that the management team within the practice are typically accessible to staff? So are they approachable? Is it easy for not only junior members of staff but non-management to actually approach management and say, I've got to go and pick my kids up from school. Do you mind if I have a shorter lunch break and finish earlier? For some reason, I've just got kids on the brain at the moment. I don't know why. But I've got 2 kids sick. I can deal with 1 kid sick, but when I've got 2 kids sick, I just can't. Do you mind? I have to stay home. Being able to approach management with these real life issues and not being afraid that they'll be stigmatised for it. 86%. Versus 67%. Is it 67 or 57? 57. So to what extent do you agree that the practice values internal customers as much as external ones? So we're all happy on the outside. We're treating our customers really well. Fluffy comes in on a lead. Hi, Fluff. How you going? Haven't seen you for 3 weeks. But the vet nurse is sort of just done your kennels today. Again, there's quite a little bit of disparity between what the practice staff think is going on, the practice management think that's going on and what staff actually feel, a difference between 66% and 45%. This is real in the vet industry in the UK, and that's why I'm presenting that evidence to you now. So some actions. I've got these 4 actions from this paper by McLeod and Clark. I thought they were terribly clever. Look at these words: strategic narrative, engaging managers, and employee voice. There is organisational integrity, espoused values are reflected in behavioural norms. I think that's mint, but that's because I'm a business person. But if I wasn't a business person, I know what farmers would think of that, which is not very good. But what does it actually mean, and how can you actually translate that advice, that evidence-based advice, into something that you can do? Let me give you an example of what I mean by employee voice. The AVMA, and I don't know if you can get a hold, if you're a member of the AVMA somehow, if you're happy to buy this report, do yourself a favour. I don't know how much it costs. I was able to get hold of it myself, but this is really eye-opening stuff. That the data were collected last year in 2014 and reported. The report was released earlier this year, in about January, February. I'll just bring your attention to the left-hand graph about females in the workplace. And this is US vets. So how that translates to this particular context, I'll leave you to decide that for yourself. Now, along the bottom here, it's a bit confusing. And actually, I could talk about this graph all day, these two graphs. There is so much going on here. This is year of graduation. So we've got the old people here, followed by the young people here. And they're women. We've got the old people here, followed by the young people here. So we're going backwards in time. So this is not when the data were collected, it's actual year of graduation. And if we just look at the women, you can see that in all cases, the pale green is the people who want to work fewer hours per week, whereas the dark green is people who want to work more hours per week. And you can see with the women, in every case, no matter when they graduated, they want to work fewer hours per... If they had a magic wand and they could just do whatever they wanted, they would actually opt to work fewer hours per week. Men are a different story. Whether they want to work more hours per week or less hours per week is an inverse relationship as you get older or younger. But my point of showing you this data, this graph, is do you know this about your own staff? I think as a manager who is listening to their staff and knows their staff, and not just that, Sally's got 3 kids and likes horse riding, and James has got 2 kids and likes yachting, and and his best preferred beer is not Foster's, and all this sort of stuff. I'm not talking about that superficial stuff. I'm talking about the stuff that they act, the reasons they turn up to work and the reasons they maintain coming to work and enjoying their work and feel that they are respected in the workplace. And I question, do you know this about your own staff? Okay, my next one, team engagement. I tried to get all these boxes on one level because I believe that there isn't really a hierarchy in veterinary practice. You might have a different opinion, but I wanted them all to be on the same level. But the slide was too small. So maybe this is a typical veterinary practice structure that you might be familiar with a senior vet, a practice manager who is responsible for the administration of the practice. There might be 2 junior vets, a couple of vet nurses, and perhaps a receptionist. That probably isn't too strange to you. In a veterinary practice like this, well, in any veterinary practice, from a management point of view, I would be advising that you have some sort of practice vision. I'm going to explain why this is so important. Now, a lot of people just sort of think of this as, so you've done an MBA, have you? I'll say that's why you've got that there. I've got to say it's more important than that. If you have a practice vision, and this can be anything you want. This can be providing the best healthcare to animals at Church House. It can be providing the best care to animals in Scotland. It can be anything you want, but just as long as it's there, because to create this employee voice, to create this sense of ownership with your employees. You talk to them and you set their performance. You set their performance for everybody to achieve that goal. And if you're really clever, what you'll do is that practice vision, if you don't have one already, is you will sit down with everybody in your team and you'll get them to participate and you'll get them to contribute to it. So they, so they have a sense of ownership of where that business is going on a day-to-day basis. So they have some sort of identity. I know how important professional identity is to vets and vet nurses and people in this profession. It's so important as well to transfer that, and that's really good. Where I come from, we don't have that sort of professional identity. People just come and go as they please, couldn't care less. But to have people want to stay with you and stay in their profession no matter what, that is really powerful. And I would encourage you to do anything you possibly can. And this doesn't have to be a big exercise. It's just a matter of talking to your employees to get that strategic narrative, to get that engagement of managers with your employee. These sexy terms, incidentally, from the McLeod paper that I just cited. That employee voice. So they have that sense of ownership and that organisational integrity, that you're all actually working for a common reason. And that reason can be whatever you want. But just as long as it's there and everybody participates. So, team engagement, done. Client relations, let's move on. So, I'm bringing in now the client. I'm so sorry, this guy doesn't get a look in. My stuff, yeah, fortunately pets and animals don't really much get looking because I'm too interested in people. So in terms of client relations and consumer purchase and the consumer purchasing process, consumers, what we know from the evidence is that consumers make their decisions from external influences and internal influences. And never forget that when you walk into a shop, when you actually take that first step into any shop, you have made the physical behaviour that's linked to what happens in your mind to buy something. You're there to hand over money. I should do more window shopping personally, but I don't. When I go in, I've made the decision to actually hand over money. I'm willing and able to hand over, usually a debit card, but some sort of financial transaction. I am happy to part with my hard-earned money. So these are these internal influences, but what's also happening with external influences, reference groups, culture and subculture. I mean, I am astounded by these boutique breeds. I can't believe how many of them are out there. Social class as well, and you'll all know this from your day-to-day experiences. But let's move on. In terms of client relations, action step number 1. Who are your clients? What services are they buying from you? What more can you offer them? Are you offering them too much? Bear with me. Don't worry, I'm coming back to this. I know that's a hot topic. Where are the gaps? I've got in my pocket here M&S Sparks card, Tesco Club card, My Waitrose card, Boots Advantage card, straight out of my purse here. I actually also want a John Lewis card. Now, I get these discounts which make me feel really good. And Tesco and actually Marks, they send me these vouchers that actually give me vouchers on stuff that I've already bought, which I think is really clever, and it makes me feel like they love me. No, they don't. All these organisations are doing this to get to know me better, so that I love them more, so I will go in and spend my money with them. Now, I'm not advocating by any stretch of the imagination Nick Royal's vet practice starts a Sparks card or anything like that. I'm not saying that at all. But the lengths that these organisations go to get to know who their clients are and why they're spending their money and what they choose to spend their money on with you is extreme. And they do it because it works. Tesco, I don't even know if anyone's ever had anything to do with Tesco, but they don't do anything that doesn't work at all, ever. And all of this, what's better for our gang here today is that this is evidence-based. They're collecting my transaction data to make these decisions, to make me think that they love me. It's all evidence-based. And you've got these practice management systems that have got all this data about your clients in them. Start using them. Get to know your clients. Who are they? Don't worry about the pets. They don't pay the bills. They don't make the decisions about what you're going to spend your money on. They just walk in, get patted, feel great sometimes, and walk out. It's the client who's doing all this. It's the client that is making your business tick over. I'm not obviously encouraging you to stop caring about pets, but what I really would like you to do is take on this idea of evidence-based client relations, evidence-based client knowledge, and actually do something with it to make your business better. So once you've got this data, once you've analysed this data and you know that a third of your clients are women with 3 kids that possibly drive Ford Focuses. Once you know, and then maybe a third of your clients are, young couples who they get young animals, kittens, puppies, and then they bring them in. They do everything great, vaccinations, pet yoga, whatever, and then they sort of remember that they've got this enormous career and they just sort of don't turn up anymore until the pet is really sick. So you've used your data to analyse these clusters, but don't forget this employee voice. Involve these people. Involve your nurses, your receptionists. Ask them, talk to your team. Are your findings accurate? Because while, I love a good data set, I really do, but they're not infallible. And to have input from the people who are actually on a day-to-day basis seeing these people, talking to these people, is absolutely essential. What more can they add based on their... Oh yeah, I've done that. And the other thing is, this isn't new to anybody, the team is responsible for client relations. Don't burden yourselves as vets with thinking that you're the only person who has to make Fluffy and Fluffy's owner, Flossie, I think we had earlier today, feel that you're the only person. It is everybody. It's absolutely everybody in the practice that's responsible for this. Now, I'm going to pose you another question. This slide that I've got up here is totally and absolutely hypothetical, random, non-evidence-based, nothing. It's just from my mind. This is your veterinary practice. This is the boundary of veterinary medicine. You've got your vet's interests. So your vets in your practice have an interest in surgery. From your investigation, your evidence-based investigation, you'll know now about your client demands. In the case of surgery, they come together and there's a nice purple patch in the middle. That's wonderful. So you've got your vet's interests and your client's interests. Now, something I should stop and say is I'm fully aware of the fact that the RCVS makes sure that every vet is is capable of treating all creatures great and small, which is just wonderful. However, please don't forget that we're also creatures of we have preferences. We have natural preferences, and there will be some people who just don't care about little furry creatures. They just can't bring themselves to it, or they just might not care about horses. That doesn't make them a bad vet, it just means they have a preference. I don't like horror movies. That doesn't mean I'm a bad film goer. It just means I have a preference, and I'll go to see horror movies and I'll, sit there with the gang and get scared and all the rest of it, but I just have preferences, and you can't expect people not to have those preferences in your workplace. So surgery, we're on a winner there. Dermatology, we've got a good overlap between vets' interest in the practice and client demands. We've got a good overlap, for example, and this, like I said, this is all just hypothetical. We've got a good overlap with endocrinology, for example. We've got a good overlap with dentistry. Ba-bong. We've got some vets in this practice who are interested in orthopaedics and exotics. But in the place where our practice is operating, the exotics and orthopaedics sort of haven't hit the market yet. Possibly it won't ever. However, from our research, from our evidence gathering exercise, we have identified that we've got clients who are interested in animal behaviour and animal nutrition. Now, the problem with this is that you've got vets who have interests and are saying, yeah, I really want to do orthopaedics CPD. And as a person who cares about their employers, you'll be saying, yeah, off you go. Do your CPD and orthopaedics, but you've got no client demand for it, so you're wasting your money. Same with exotics. Who are the next people you're going to recruit? With this evidence, are you going to start recruiting people who, these graduates from places like I work going, yeah, I just love all animals. And then they actually realise, well, I am a person and I do have preferences, and I'm working in a place where there isn't anything that really motivates me, so I'm starting to get a little bit sad, I'm starting to get a little bit depressed, and I just don't really like where I work anymore. And then you start to worry about these people. But also on the flip side, check out the clients. They've identified that the people who are treating their pets for behaviour and nutrition issues, they can pick up, yeah, they're sort of interested, but they've seen someone down the road who's got a behavioural specialist, so they're gone. And don't forget, once that person has set their foot in your practice, they're willing to spend some money. And if you can't provide that level of service that they're expecting, it's like when Tesco has empty shelves. Those people will go somewhere else. They've gone to Tesco to buy a bottle of soy sauce. If you don't have it, they will go to Sainsbury's to buy it because they've made the decision that they want it. What have I got next? Right. How are you going to afford the time to do all this? This is something else that I believe is a problem around the traps. Nick, how much time have I got? Improving practice turnover. I've got a scenario here, which probably will look quite normal to you between opening and morning tea time. 20-minute appointments, 20-minute consultations. You have a booster vaccination come in, an unusual pigmentation, a microchip implant, a puppy vaccination, and some poor soul who's got vomiting diarrhoea. And my pricing data from the RVC's first opinion practice suggests that vet A will charge this amount of money. If I reveal my curtain from behind my curtain, I've got vet Z, who will just short abbreviate to vet Z, who in that same, instead of just offering the booster vaccination, £47 next, they'll do a little bit of value adding, they'll do a bit of client bonding. and they'll booster vaccination, kennel cough, internal and external parasite prevention, possible microchip implant, and that same customer will walk away with a bill for £100 as opposed to £47, and so on and so forth. Vet A, by morning tea time, has brought in £220. Vet Z, by morning tea time, has brought in £340. Now, I am fully aware that there will be some people in the audience who are saying, I can't believe you're advocating asking people to spend more money in this practice. That's disgusting. But there will be other people who are going, jack it up, lady. If you've just been saying that the minute they set foot in my practice, they want to spend more money, you've got to take advantage of that. Okay, that's for you to think about. I'm not getting involved in that argument. What I'm trying to present is evidence-based pricing data where you can either bring in £220 to your practice before morning tea or $340 in terms of making a profit. Vet A and Vet Z. Our sales minus our cost of drugs, minus our cost of employees, minus our overheads and establishment costs. With a £100 consultation, Vet A will bring in £10. I mean, I don't know about you, but if I was a vet, I'd be giving my next person a high five if I gave a consultation for £100. Of that, you're only actually making £10, you're bringing home £10. Whereas Vet Z, £100 consult, they're a little bit, their cost of drugs is actually the same. They've got their employees better organised. They're not paying any less. Let me stress that. They're not paying any less, but they have managed to get they've got their employees better organised. They're not wasting money unnecessarily on wages, and they're not wasting money necessarily on overheads and establishment costs. So they're bringing in twice as much. Only a tenner, but it's still twice as much. So from our appointments before morning tea, and incidentally, this is nobody saying, "Oh, can I have a discount?" This is just smooth sailing. So, Vet A, their sales before morning tea time of £220 has made a profit of $22.20. Vet Z, they've brought in £68 to the business just by having their management that little bit more finely tuned. And it's Vet Z or Vet Z who's sleeping better at night. It's Vet Z who's able to come and spend a day at the EBVM Skills Day because they had their business really well organised. They can leave their business. They can leave their business to their staff with the knowledge that the business is going to keep ticking over with no problems at all. Okay, it's not as simple. This idea, I'm very, very conscious of this idea of upselling. It's not as simple as asking, do you want fries with that? Like they do in McDonald's. It's a lot more complicated than that because you've got animal health and client perceptions of the service that you're providing. So, and trust me, everybody finds hard selling difficult. I can't do it, and I would never ask anybody to do it because it's really hard. But taking advantage of the principles of preventative veterinary medicine, client bonding, these sorts of things, just bringing that little bit extra in per consultation, and the idea of increasing that performance will win you the day. How do I know? Once you've done all this, how do you know that you've done it right? Veterinary Insights with SPIVs have developed this wonderful veterinary benchmarking service. I don't have the means at the moment to show you, but I would, if I was you, jump on the website, have a look at Veterinary Insights, and have a look to see. And if you're the sort of person who is just not happy with your own performance and you want to see what people around you are doing and how you're doing better or worse than them, this is how it's achieved, by a concept called benchmarking. And I encourage every single one of you to sign up to some sort of benchmarking. This is just an example. So I'm just about to finish now. 5 minutes gone, sorry. It's a function of having an enthusiastic speaker. Can't have everything. So, whether whether you think about it in terms of the theory of marginal gains or aggregated marginal gains, whether you look at it from my evidence-based agenda, veterinary medicine agenda, whether you want to look at my agenda today as pieces of a puzzle all fitting together, or you want to think of it from Aristotle's point of view, where, this wheel is good, but I tell you what, it's a hell of a lot better when it's made into a bicycle. It's a lot better for me as a bicycle than just a plain wheel. When you put it all together, the whole is great. The sum of its parts is greater than the whole on so many levels. So in terms of sustainable veterinary business management, make the most of your team. That was my first message for today. Know your clients and respond to their needs. That was my second message. My third message was understand sources of profit and communicate that to your staff. Please don't keep them in the dark, because quite often your junior staff will be the people when you're at the EBVM Skills Day, and in November next year when you come to the EBVM, when you see us in Edinburgh, they will be doing this on your behalf. They have to know. They don't learn it from me. I tell you what, they're not interested. They want to do equine spinal surgery more than they want to listen to this stuff. They want to get pug dogs and facelift them. They don't want this. This has no relevance to them whatsoever. But the idea is to stay in business, to caring for animals. I've got some references there, and I'd just like to acknowledge two of my colleagues who have been so helpful, Graham Milligan and Martin Whiting. Don't forget to make a contribution. Like Nick said, I'm responsible for the business section of EBVM knowledge, and I would love to hear from you. I really would. That's who I am. They're my contact details. Please get in touch if you've got some ideas, because I'd really like to speak to you about them, because I love what I do. Thank you, Nick.